At this time, I'd like to introduce the keynote speaker for our 15th anniversary conference. Our speaker this evening was born in Charleston, West Virginia, and he received his bachelor's degree in sociology and psychology and his master's degree in psychiatric social work at Wayne State University in Detroit. He has been an innovator in many areas. During the Civil Rights Movement, he coordinated a march in Detroit which featured Martin Luther King and drew over 500,000. This was believed to be the largest civil rights march in America. It is also believed to be the first time in which Dr. King delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. He was the first and founding dean as well as professor of the School of Communications at Howard University. He founded the annually held Black College Day in 1980, in which the U.S. Congress has officially designated, by his choice, the last Monday in September as National Historically Black Colleges Day. In 1985, he founded the Buy Freedom campaign, and as chairman, he leads a movement to stimulate black business and create new jobs. Among his numerous civic activities, he is on the board of directors of the Association for the Study of Afro-American Life and History and the National Business League, among others. The Harvard Foundation has also chosen him as a member of its prestigious Board of Associates. But it is for his work as a journalist that he is best known. His column is syndicated in over 100 newspapers nationwide. His television series, Tony Brown's Journal, is the nation's longest-running and top-ranked Black Affairs series. The series was recently selected as one of the top 10 television shows of all time that present positive black images. His company, Tony Brown Productions Incorporated, also publishes a quarterly magazine, markets videotapes and movies from a collection called the Library of Black History, and offers a videotape duplication service. As a writer and film director, this multimedia entrepreneur has recently completed filming his first feature motion picture with a message about drug abuse and self-respect. The name of the movie, The White Girl, has a double meaning. It is both the street name for cocaine in the movie, and it represents the way that a young black woman sees herself. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present to you television civil rights crusader, Tony Brown.
May God grant me the words to speak his thoughts. As I stand here before you at your 15th annual banquet dinner, looking out over a sea of 2,300 young black men and women, you are here to face your conference theme, challenging, training, excelling, moving forward into a better tomorrow. Your grade point average as a group is 0.3% higher than the national average for all engineering students in this country. My experience with you today and with your officers has taught me that you are courteous, you are insightful, you have a consciousness about yourselves that obviously exceeds the general population. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any great deduction, it is obvious to understand that I am talking to a group of men and women who have the capacity and the potential to shape not only the direction and the future of blacks in America, but to shape the future of America's role in the world. The problem, ladies and gentlemen, is not your potential. The problem is your determination. I had a wonderful conversation with two young men outside who were as impressed with this meeting as I am. And one said, "Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could just keep this up?" And I said to him, "Yes, and if is a big word, but at least you know if is a big situation." And my message to you tonight is to ask you to walk through some historical events and to ask you to use your overwhelming mental capacity to look at the situation of Americanized Africans in perhaps a new light. And I will begin with a rather ominous challenge. The challenge comes from a study conducted by the University of Chicago, which projects that within 11 years, by year 2000, 70% of all black men will be unemployed, 70% of all black women will be without a husband, and 70% of all black children will grow up in the household without the supervision of a male. That means if this study comes to fruition, the black community as we know it in America will be extinct. We in the black community are literally and figuratively in the dark. We have two choices. We can curse the darkness or we can turn on the light. But you can only turn on the light with truth. And quite frankly, my brothers and sisters, you owe it to yourselves and future generations to embrace reality. The great problem with the black community in America today is we do not solve our problems because we are not in touch with reality. And the first thing you must do is to find that reality. No matter how onerous it is the starting point. And we must understand that, quite frankly, in the black community, we are going about solving our problems in the wrong way. We have a set of assumptions. One assumption is if we can get to know enough white people, if we can run away fast enough from being Africans, if we can stop being what God made us, if we can put our babies on yellow buses in the morning, ship them off to white neighborhoods, they'll come back educated. If we don't buy from other black people, we've made progress. If we don't go to school with one another, we've made the world a better place. If we marry other people, we've improved the race. If we spend our resources with other people, we're fair. And ladies and gentlemen, if we don't have 150 national organizations spending $3 billion each summer in white hotels discussing white racism and black poverty. I am here to say to you, the same problem the black community has is the same problem that America has. You know, we always like to discuss how bad off blacks are vis-a-vis whites. Let's discuss America vis-a-vis the rest of the world. We now live in a declining power. The United States maintains 29% of all goods and services by borrowing $250 billion, primarily from Germany and Japan. The average American who graduates from high school has 1 year of math. The average German and Japanese has 4 years of math. 44% of Germans and Japanese graduate in science and engineering. Only 17% of Americans graduate in science and engineering. Therefore, Germany and Japan have twice as much science and engineering in their products as we do, which is one of the reasons they're beating us in the world market. This country, ladies and gentlemen, is not competing with the rest of the world because this country is not doing primarily what Germany and Japan are doing. And what are they doing? It is so very simple. Germany and Japan use culture as a basis of pride and use pride as a basis of economic, political, social, and educational achievement. The United States of America has spent for centuries all of her energy knocking down anyone else's culture, telling everybody that we are all just Americans. And what does just being an American mean? It means being an Anglo-Saxon. Now that's okay if you're English or German or Scandinavian. You can be an Anglo-Saxon because that's what you are. But if you're something else, you can't be that. The bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is in 1912 at Ellis Island, a psychologist declared all 80% of Russians feeble-minded, 80% of Jews feeble-minded, 76% of Hungarians feeble-minded. In 1875, the New York Times did an editorial and said there is absolutely no hope for Italians, and they called the Irish, they said they were so wild they would never fit into America. They did the same thing to the Eastern Europeans at the turn of the century that they've done to African Americans for the last 400 years. They completely decimated their culture, made them ashamed of their cultures. They cut off their sideburns, denied they were Catholics, changed their names to Anglo names, and all tried to be little pseudo-Anglo-Saxons. They never made it. And African Americans, my brothers and sisters, will never be white. I don't want to frighten anybody in this room, but if you were born black, I don't want to frighten you, but if you're born black, that's the way you're going to die. You see, the problem is so simple that we have completely missed the problem, therefore we're nowhere near the solution. The problem, ladies and gentlemen, I submit, has nothing to do with white people. Absolutely nothing. It has everything to do with white people because we are obsessed with white people. We talk about them in the morning, during breakfast, during lunch, during sex. All we discuss is what somebody else is not doing for us or what somebody else does to us. You know, it's sort of like if I walk into a bedroom and a man and his wife are making love. I walk up to them and say, what is my role in this relationship? Why, I have no role in that relationship. White people have no role in our future, and white people have no role in our oppression. We think they do. We, ladies and gentlemen, have placed them at the center of everything we do in terms of our own survival. And until we get white people straight and out of the picture, we aren't going anywhere. Let's just get the whole race situation straight. Black people and white people are basically the same. Most of us are average. We have a few geniuses and a liberal sprinkling of fools. And anywhere you find a racial distribution, you find the same thing. Now let me tell you how dumb busing is. Busing is based on a white supremacist notion that anybody of African descent is too dumb to learn with other people of African descent. That's really what busing is based on. I don't care what they say, underneath it all, it's nothing but a method of assimilation based on a concept of integration, which is a distortion of desegregation. And all they're doing is saying if any two Africans are gathered, something will go down in terms of quality. That's what it means. Now, to show you how off busing is, if busing were really logical, they say we should bus blacks to white neighborhoods so they will learn, implying that white folks are smarter than us. But it's dumb because only 17% of whites finish college, 46% of Asian Americans finish college. So if you were going to send the dumb blacks to some neighborhood, we should bus them to the yellow neighborhoods in the first place. So we've bused now for 35 years. At 3 o'clock, we get strangers back in our neighborhoods who don't know who they are and still can't read and write. And we've moved out of our neighborhoods. We're conducting the most effective economic boycott against black people in business of any economic boycott ever conducted in America. We have run away from the so-called black underclass. It's the largest growing segment of the American population. It is the largest growing segment because those of us with middle-class values and resources have cut ourselves off from them. They were already cut off from white America. Now they're out there by themselves. And we think somehow, some of us, that we're going to make it. Oh, Tony, I know that's all good, but I'm over here at AAI, and I'm now mainstreaming, and I've taken my degree. Okay, that's fine. Another lady said to me, Mr. Brown, I think, you need to know something. Some of us are doing fine. I have a little girl, a little daughter, and we've spent $10,000 at the orthodontist getting her teeth straight. And she's doing classical ballet and piano and reading Iliad and Homer. I said, that's so wonderful. But who's she gonna marry? Old Willie Jones is standing out on the corner, dangling participles, busting up gerunds. He wouldn't know Homer if Homer were in bed with him. Who's she gonna marry? We can't make it by ourselves. You don't dance with yourself. When you get rich and famous and you want to have fun, you have to invite somebody over to party with you, don't you? You can't party by yourself. You folks gonna get all these wonderful degrees and you're gonna be heads of everything that's important. You need somebody out here to be proud of you. You can't have it all by yourself. The bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, instead of us having these premises that somehow if we can be near somebody, we can have what they have and we can then improve our situation. Nobody in centers of power invites anyone else into a center of power and shares power. First of all, it's naive to believe you're going to be integrated into power. Secondly, it is erroneous to assume that all white people are racist. Most white people are not racist. But most white people have made up their minds that any association with us will reduce the quality of their lives. The third thing is we believe the civil rights movement is going wherever white folks call us names. Now, when these poor ignorant folks down in Forsyth, Georgia acted up, all of the so-called American civil rights leaders marched down to Forsyth, Georgia with NBC, ABC, and CBS on television. Do you really believe that going to Forsyth, Georgia, where you have a bunch of backward, ignorant people, is really going to do something for black America? Do you really believe that every time somebody calls us a name and we knee-jerk react, that we've somehow made progress? And we call that a movement. We spent 10 years cursing Ronald Reagan and calling this man everything you could call him. And did it change anything? And it's not going to change anything. George Bush is a Ronald Reagan who is gentler and kinder. And the next white man, whether he's a Democrat or a Republican, is going to have the same agenda. All the Republicans and the Democrats want out of you is your vote. They don't mean you any good. These parties don't have you on their agenda. They come around and pat you on the head every 4 years and use you up. And they've got you debating which white man is the best one. And they've got you believing somehow that if a white man is a Republican, there are racist genes in him, but if he's a Democrat, they left his body. No, you're out here by yourselves. The first place to get in touch is, you may not particularly like me, and I may not particularly care for you, but we'd better get one thing straight. We're all we've got. Now, based on that, let me say what I think the solution is. I think the solution is the new immigrants who are coming to America. They are the solution, ladies and gentlemen, because they know more about America, obviously, than we know about America. 25 years ago, the Japanese came and took pictures. Went home, developed them, came back, and bought up everything they took a picture of. Ask you, how is it that the Vietnamese came here 1979 not speaking one word of English, and they now dominate, along with other Asian Americans, every scientific honors society in America? You go out to your Stanfords and your Harvards and all your famous white schools, find your preferred American, the Anglo-Saxon. When they walk into a room and they see those Asians, you know what they do. They change the sections, don't they? Nobody wants a curve with the Asians in the class. They got one Vietnamese. 7 years ago, he couldn't speak English. He's received 7 degrees from MIT. Another one graduated last year #1 in his class at West Point. Ladies and gentlemen, the Koreans now own 23% of the businesses in Harlem. In 10 years, they'll own 50% of the businesses in Harlem. Black West Indians from the poor earn 10% more than the average white American, and black West Indians are better educated than the average white American. Blacks from Haiti, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, and black immigrants from Africa in the last 10 years now have a per capita family income higher than the native-born black American. At one time, they had a sign on the beach in Miami, "No Jews or dogs allowed." The Jews bought the beach. What do all these groups have in common? All of these groups have the same thing in common that the Germans and the Japanese have in common. They have pride in their culture. They use pride in their culture as a basis of economic, social, political, and educational achievement. The African American is using the same amount of energy denying being of African extraction. The African American, like America, as it interfaces with the rest of the world, is denying the most valuable asset he or she has: culture, and pride in that culture. You aren't going anywhere, my brothers and sisters. You can get these fancy degrees, you can teach at the major universities, you can make all kinds of money, you can get all kinds of trophies. But until you understand what Shakespeare meant when he wrote in Hamlet, when Polonius the father told Laertes the son as he was going out into the world, "This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man." Until you get that straight, you aren't going to get anything else straight. The bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is your value is in your culture. Now, I know that somebody within the sound of my voice is saying, "This guy is really out to lunch. He's talking that old culture nonsense. The idea here is to mainstream." Well, you can do whatever you want. But ladies and gentlemen, when you came in those doors this evening, you brought your culture with you, and it brought you with it, and anywhere you go, they are inseparable. Your culture is what you are. It is everything you do. You may not be conscious of it, but it's there. Let me give you an example of how it works. I spoke at a black church recently, and just before I got there, the preacher had been fired for some unspoken indiscretion. And he got up to tell his flock goodbye, arrogant, unrepentant. He said to them, "Jesus brought me here, and Jesus is taking me away." And about that time, the brothers and sisters slowly broke into, "Oh, what a friend we have in Jesus." Now in academic circles, they call that call and response. You see, in the African oral tradition, the audience helps the speaker deliver the message. Right on, brother. I hear you. That's it. Get down now. In the Euro-centered culture, the audience waits until the end of the message and politely punctuates it with applause. Neither culture is superior. They've just developed uniquely. Now, I ask you to reflect back on when you're in an audience and you have a large percentage of whites. You look at the blacks and they become culturally ambivalent. They will look to the whites to see what the code is. It's the time to laugh. What do? So I say to you, tonight, if I get to you and that African in you really wants to do you right on, that's it, brother, get down, and you don't want these white folk here to know you're enjoying yourselves, you can just... You see, this is a non-oral right on. You know where it comes from? You've been to a good black church, you've seen it. It comes from when we crossed, we lived near the railroad tracks. When it was time to cross, now nobody ever had a class. Nobody ever said do this or do that. It just evolves. Let me give you another example. As indigenous, I spoke at San Francisco to a group, plain old community black folks. First time they'd been downtown at their annual dinner, and they were all pretty with the new dresses and suits, and they were seated as you are, table 59, 44, all big, huge banquet hall like this one. And I saw a man moving all over the place, and everybody kept calling him. He just darted all over the room. And I said to my friend, I said, "Who's that?" He said, "That's Scotty." I said, "What's he doing?" He said, "Scotty brought the hot sauce." really want you to go somewhere with me in your mind, because there are not many situations in which black people can really elevate their consciousness immediately. And I want you to go with me. I want you to go into objectivity. I want you to go out of fear. I want you to put behind the 400 years of making you afraid to be an African and getting in touch with it that's in you. And I want you just to relieve yourself for a minute. Take an objective, good, honest look at America. There are 3 stages of America's evolution: cultural, communications, evolution. Stage 1, black folks create a new communications art form. Stage 1. Stage 2, white America rejects it. Stage 3, white America does it. Now, watch how it works. Now, black people come up with some new art form, and somebody says there's something wrong with it. 5 years ago, they said that old underclass music, rapping, was backwards and illiterate, and nobody could understand it. Stage 1. Stage 2, white folks reject it. Stage 3, white folks sell it to you now. 35 years ago, I saw a story the other day, said the 35-year history of rock and roll. And my first question was, where was rock and roll 35 years and 1 day ago? Now, 35 years and 1 day ago, James Brown, Ruth Brown, Jim Brown, all the Browns were singing the good old music called rhythm and blues. Stage 1. Stage 2, the white parents were telling their children, you will go to hell, that's devil music, if you listen to it. It'll corrupt your morals. Stage 3, white folks did it. They had Pat Boone to cover, what's the brother's name? Not Fats Waller, but whatever his name is. Pat Boone covered him. They had another Patty somebody to cover Ruth Brown. They sang the same song, same arrangement, same music, but they wouldn't let them sing it. So it was stage 2 they rejected, stage 3 they sold it. The biggest thing going on now in plastic surgery is white women getting their lips shot up. Nice thick lips. Biggest thing in plastic surgery. Now, stage 1 was, they said we look like pickaninnies. Stage 2, oh, don't do that. Stage 3, they do it. Stage 1, they say we're inferior because they're dark. We're dark. Stage 3, they lie in the sun getting skin cancer trying to look like us. Now, all I want you to do is to open your mind up and understand you've been had. If you ever play poker, when you sit down at a poker table, the guy said, what does a successful poker player do? The guy said, the first thing you do if you're good at playing poker is you spot the sucker. First thing, you look for the sucker in the group. And he said, if you can't find a sucker, you leave because you're the sucker. Now, all I want you to do is to look around this table, this poker table, and figure out who the sucker is. Ladies and gentlemen, there has never been a more successful and thorough brainwashing than this 400-year trip that has been put on the African in this country. Nowhere, anywhere in the history of the universe. Now, I'm not angry. I'm not upset. I am enlightened. I simply want us to change it. I don't want to blame anybody. I'm not asking for reparations. I just want those of us who are victimized by it to know we have the greatest investment in changing it. But the first thing we've got to do is to recognize it. The second thing, ladies and gentlemen, is understand how it works. Now, how does it work? The first thing you do is you rename somebody. If you saw Roots, they took Kunta Kinte, a proud African, and would not let him call himself that, cut off his foot, and made him call himself what? Toby. When they had the massacre in South Africa, the Sharpeville massacre, it was because the South African students refused to learn Afrikaner, the language. They knew if they ever bought into Afrikaner, They were finished because they would have been culturally have been wiped out. Now look at those of us here in America. African Americans in this country, and that's what we are. June the 20th, the first 20 Africans came to these shores. June the 20th, 1619. They came at the same time from Germany, Ireland, France. Today they're French Americans. They can go back to France. They're German Americans. They can go back to Germany. They're Irish Americans. They can go back to Ireland. But the minority cannot go back to minority land. And do you know why the minority cannot go back to minority land? Because there is no such place as minority land. Ladies and gentlemen, we are African Americans, and we call ourselves minority poor. The Germans still call themselves Germans. The Jews still call themselves Jews. The Poles still call themselves Poles. How in the world are we the only people who became something else? And here we are walking around today addressing each other with slave languages like minority and defeatist languages like poor. Do you know where the Jews in America would be if we labeled them minority poor? Or where the Irish would be if they went to school and the first thing a little Irish baby learns is he's a minority and he's poor? Don't you know if you buy into being a minority, you'll seek a minority status? And don't you know if you believe you're poor, you'll behave poorly? Don't you think your name means something? You'd get a man to believe he's better, he puts on a dress and tries to have a baby. But as long as you know you're Bob or Harry or Arnold, you'll act like a man. The bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is it is so subtle that we're falling for it. And here we're going around telling people, I'm minority poor. Ladies and gentlemen, if you believe you belong to a minority, you cannot count to 10, because 8 out of 10 people in the world are not white. The ultimate conflict between Russia and the United States will not be fought in El Salvador or in Lebanon. It will be fought in South Africa for the 46 minerals under the ground. And South Africa will be free. Black people will control South Africa, and it doesn't matter if President Bush picks Bo Diddley as the next ambassador. Nothing is going to stop the forward march of history. When South Africa is free, the economic might of South Africa, instead of fueling the economies of the West, will turn inward and create the most massive manufacturing recovery you've ever witnessed. And while, ladies and gentlemen, the future of America is marching to Africa and the non-white parts of the world, America is interfacing with its past in England and in France and in Germany, while the future is on the Pacific Rim and in Japan, while 80% of the people in the world will begin to manufacture more, and you are the best educated Africans in the world. You are America's bridge to her future, or she doesn't have a future. And she is conning you into being somebody's affirmative action, somebody's minority, by giving you these nomenclatures. A minority at best is no more than 49 on a scale of 100. If you're the most successful minority in the world, you're an absolute failure. Never let anybody get you to come all the way up to the minimum. Your place should never be established by anyone else. Why should one look at your black shiny face and determine you are a minority? Don't you know what they're saying to you? They're saying you're not up to it. They're saying you have to be somewhere where the cripples belong, the people who can't read, write, and count. And pretty soon we'll believe we're really on full when we get C's, won't we? If we just pass, or if we just get into the company. It's not about just getting in. It's not about being an employee. It's not about other people telling you where your place is. Your place is anywhere your talents will take you. Instead of you trying to be somebody's affirmative action quota or minority, you should be aiming to be presidents of every major corporation, president of the United States, heads of the Senate, heads of every major corporation in this country. And you women, your place is in the House and the Senate. But as long as you stay in the House, you'll never get in the Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, it was June the 20th, 1619, when the first 20 Africans came to this country as free men and women. It wasn't no 1660. They got the lie called white supremacy and racism straight. But it wasn't until December the 1st, 1955, that Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a segregated bus in Montgomery, Alabama, that we stood up all over America with a new sense of consciousness. And on December the 5th, 1955, we moved to the front of the bus. And when we moved to the front of the bus, what did we find out? There'd been plenty of room there all along. All we ever had to do was to move. And that's what I'm saying to you. Yes, you're good. You're the best. You're the best we've ever produced. But you're not there yet. You're not going to be there until you break through the next barrier of consciousness. Rosa Parks on December 5th, 1955 brought us our last major breakthrough in consciousness. And we haven't had one since. And we won't have one until your generation breaks with the past. Until you break with the false premises that white people are your enemy, that if white people like you, you'll get over, that somebody can stop you from having what you have. That's a consciousness that's in your mind. And you will never fulfill your potential until you get over it. And getting over it means you're going to have to oppose some of your elders who hold on to the past. They are not going to let go. And you will not ever get over it unless you get out of that minority business. Now, what's our surname? Minority poor. Oh, in the black community, we've raised poverty to a state of art. All we discuss is what we don't have, what they won't let us, what they won't give us. Ladies and gentlemen, too many of us have listened to that nonsense in Porgy and Bess. You ever listen to the words written by that white man, George Gershwin? Written for us. I got plenty of nothing, and nothing is plenty for me. I don't like that one. I like the one that comes out of the Bible, sung best by Billie Holiday. God bless the child that's got his own. And you can believe one thing, if you pray to the high God of poverty, he'll lavish it on you. If you want nothing, you'll get plenty of it. I have a book at home called The Game of Life and How to Play It. The first paragraph says, most people think life is a battle. It is not. It is a game of giving and receiving, and the rules are found in the Old and the New Testaments. Everything on this earth, every apple, every orange, every Gucci bag, every second home, every fur coat was put here by God, not by white people. All you've got to do is to tell the universe it's yours, believe it, have faith, and before you get up off of your knees, it's on its way to you, unless you block it. Unless you block it with minority poor or some other negative thought. Now, I'm sure that's a little too esoteric or spiritual for some of you, so I'd like to break the same phenomenon down in hardcore capitalistic free enterprise terms. There are 30 million of us that the Census Bureau can find. There are more blacks in America than Canadians in Canada, and as many blacks in America as Poles in Poland. Last year we earned in excess of $250 billion. We spent in excess of $200 billion for goods and services. Now that's roughly equivalent to the gross national product of Canada or Australia, and equal to the gross national product of the 9th largest nation in the free world. That's how much money black Americans had last year. We're 12% of the population. We buy 18% of the orange juice, 20% of the rice, 26% of Cadillac cars, 99% of floor shine shoes. I see his brother checking his feet up here. 56% of us own our own homes. 40% of all records purchased in America are purchased by black teenagers. Blacks between 12 and 24 purchase over 50% of all tickets to movie theaters. We are 11%, 12% of the population, and we drink 20% of the Scotch whiskey. If you took blacks out of America, Wall Street would collapse last week. we are not poor, and no, we are not a minority. We are a cultural, economic market that has been trained to behave as a poor minority. We are a cultural, economic market that has been trained to behave as a poor minority. We spend only 6.6% of our income with a black business or a black professional. We spend almost 95% of our money with a non-black person. Every other ethnic and racial group in America turn their money over from 5 to 12 times in their own neighborhoods before one penny leaves. We turn our money over with one another less than once. They spend their money in a 360-degree angle, a circle. It comes right back to them. We spend our money in a 180-degree angle. It goes directly away from us. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no math there. There is no mathematical possibility for black and white equality in America. The only color of freedom in America is green. And you cannot have equality by giving away 95% of your money and living on 5% of it. You earn $100 a week and I earn $100 a week. You give me 95 of your dollars. I'm living on $195 and you're living on $5. How could your house be as big as mine? How could your car be as new as mine? How even could your IQ be as high as mine? The group in America with the highest IQ is the group in America with the highest income. The group in America with the second highest IQ is the group in America with the second highest income. Blacks are at the bottom, income, retention, and IQ. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot blame another people for 100% of your problems and give them 95% of your money. How in the world, I ask you? We say, oh yes, unemployment. If one national black leader said, if we had been a part of the Reagan recovery, we would have made another $165 million. We don't need to make any more money. If we had made another $165 million, we would have given 95% of $420 billion away instead of 95% of $250 billion away. Nothing relative would change for us if we make more money. The bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is we spend $170 billion, $700 million more with the rest of America than they spend with us, which means we export 1.7 million jobs out of our own communities each year. You know where job creation comes from? It doesn't come from the federal government or the local governments. You buy from a polka dot person, you spend your money with a polka dot person, you create a job for a polka dot person, you make a polka dot family safe and happy, and you make a polka dot community safe and happy. You spend no money with a black person, you create no jobs for black people, and you stabilize no black communities. Now, you can give me a lot of reasons why you don't buy from other black people. I've been told black people are not courteous. I've been told the prices are too high. Well, first of all, 329,000 black people are in business. 95% of them are simply self-employed people who are in small businesses. No small business can have prices that are competitive with a large business because they don't operate on volume. They don't operate on volume because we don't give them the volume. We spend all of our money with white people and blame them for having high prices. How could they have anything but high prices? Now let's get to the cute one. We're really cute when we get to this one. Well, you know, Tony, I would spend with my brother and sister, but they're not polite. This is a black person talking. Now, they walk into a store, they buy from a Korean. The Korean insults them. They go out, go next door, buy from another Korean. They walk in the store, buy from an Arab. The Arab insults them. They go out, go next door, buy from another Arab. They walk in the store, buy from a black person. The black person insults them. They go out and spend the rest of their lives telling everybody why they'll never buy from another black person. And the bottom line is they didn't want to buy from a black person in the first place. They don't want to buy from them because they don't like being black and they don't like anybody else who is black. It's called self-hatred. And until they learn to like themselves for what they are not going to support other people in their groups. It is none of Tony Brown's business what you do with your money. That is your own business. I just want to say this. Look in the mirror every morning and look at the problem. Stop having these meetings, giving out trophies, calling Ronald Reagan all kinds of names, and white folks and conservatives all kinds of names. If we took our money, spent 50% of it, helped each other, stabilized our families, built up our neighborhoods, Ronald Reagan would be here tonight making the damnedest Black History Month speech you ever heard in your life. since we want these nice pat excuses, we spend all of our money with somebody else and hold conventions and give each other trophies for who can call somebody else the most names. Ladies and gentlemen, it's demagoguery. And I ask you, the new leaders, to make up your minds what you want to be. I ask you, we don't have another generation. This is it for us. We're going to turn the tide with you, or we're not going to turn it at all. And we just got to make a fundamental decision. All of us in here are middle class. Let's just make a decision. Let's just go home and drink our beer, watch our color TV, drive our BMWs, and be good, content, middle class slaves and shut up. Let's stop talking about civil rights. Take off your NAACP button and your Martin Luther King dream. Take off all those trappings. Stop standing up telling everybody how you're going to free the black community and we're leading the civil rights march. We go somewhere and lead a rally and go right next door and give everybody else 95% of our money and pat each other on the back. That is not leadership. And I say to you, if the people who are leading don't want to lead, if they want to continue that demagoguery, then they're going to have to get out of the way and give up their seats to somebody who really wants to lead. The only color of freedom in America is green. You cannot have freedom if you do not follow the following formula. Wealth equals power. Power equals freedom in all forms: economic, social, political, and educational. If you're not using your wealth to develop power, you cannot have freedom. Freedom is not white people's to give us. They don't have freedom for us. Freedom is the way you feel about yourself. You free yourself in here. Nobody has a legislative plan for freedom. You want dignity? Confer it upon yourselves. You want your women to be respected? Respect them. You just look around this room. You tell me we need somebody else. Just look at one another. This is all you'll ever need. And if you just develop the consciousness to understand it, that every time you get together like this, you scare the hell out of everybody else. And they will call you all kinds of names because you scare them. And I want to say this, I didn't say white people, I said they. The enemy is not white, it is ignorance. The same ignorance in the form of the Negro lawyers who call themselves civil rights lawyers, who team up with the phony white liberals to destroy black colleges in the name of integration. They don't like black folks any better than the liberal white lawyers like black folks. They both believe we're basket cases and we're fundamentally inferior and we cannot run institutions of higher learning. It is not just white people we're talking about. My brothers and sisters, I'm saying to you, you have a head start on the game if you keep it. But everything in this society is going to be thrown at you. They're going to tell you you can't make it in the corporate world. Ladies and gentlemen, you can make it in the corporate world if you believe in yourself. You can make it in any world if you believe in yourself. And all you got to do is to read 3 or 4 pages of history. Anybody who's been successful has a strong sense of him or herself. That's all you need. And when you get to be 20 years older, who are you going to marry? You're going to marry one another. Who's going to be your best buddy, your college buddy? Who's your best girlfriend, your soror? Who is your community? This room 20 years from now will be the same people in it. The difference is you'll be running everything. You'd be fools to give up that advantage. You would be out of your mind going somewhere trying to integrate into something that you'll never get into. And if you did get into it, what would you be? Somebody's token. No. Do what everybody else is doing. Understand what America is. It is not a melting pot, and nobody's going to melt. It is a culturally diverse society. And individuals succeed based on the success of the group. If the group is not successful, it impairs the ability of the individual to be successful. John F. Kennedy wasn't the first Catholic who was qualified to be president. John F. Kennedy was the first Catholic that came along at a time when Catholics had developed enough influence and affluence to elect a Catholic. It's your community that you must support. That creates your possibilities. For those of you who want to go into business, you'll say, yes, Mr. Brown, but I can't get venture capital. No, you can't get venture capital. And I'll tell you why. The Cubans have more money in one Cuban bank in Miami than blacks have in the 9 largest black banks in America combined. You can't get venture capital because you put your money in white banks who won't loan it to you because you're black. If you put your money in a black bank, you could borrow some money and you'd have venture capital. But as long as you keep your money in somebody else's pocket, you won't get it back. It's up to you what you do with your money. Well, we have to understand that that's the only way we're going to be free. But we're only going to use our money intelligently when we understand who we are and feel good about who we are. So I'd like to ask you, brilliant persons, 3 American history questions. Now, please keep in mind that these are American history questions. Number 1, name 3 African American heroes of the American Revolutionary War. Number 2, what African American laid out our nation's capital? Number 3, who chopped down the cherry tree and could not tell a lie? Now, if you only got number 3 correct, you probably received an A in high school history. And if you received an A in high school history, you are an expert in his story. Not history, his story. And his story is the glue that holds all of the lies together. If you could go in the history books and put the truth in the place of his story, there would be no such concept of racism because we would all operate on the basis of truth. You see, I love America. I love America because I know America's history. I know the first American to die in the Revolutionary War was a black man named Crispus Attucks. I know that our nation's capital was laid out by a young black scientific genius named Benjamin Banneker. When Pierre L'Enfant became upset with Jefferson and took the plans back to France. I know the first successful open heart surgery was performed in 1893 by Dr. Daniel Hale Williams in Chicago. I know that Garrett A. Morgan invented the electric traffic signal, the stop sign, not to stop black cars or black people in black cars, but so we could all have a system of street safety. And Hank Aaron is not the all-time black home run hitter in baseball. Hank Aaron is the all-time home run hitter in baseball. Now, if we may, let us go back to what his story says is the beginning of civilization. His story says history began in Europe. It did not. In 711 AD, Moors, Africans, navigated from Africa with compasses, sailed across the water, conquered Spain, and took the bagpipes into Scotland when the Spaniards believed if you went too far out in the water, you fell off the end of the world. Alexander Sergei Pushkin, a black Russian, created the syntax for the Russian language. Alexander Dumas, you've studied him and his son, Alexander Dumas Jr., who became chairman of the Committee of 40 Immortals, Europe's most renowned literary group. You learned that one of them wrote The Three Musketeers et al. You learned they were Frenchmen. But did they tell you they were black Frenchmen? And a man named Beethoven, who played the piano at 3 and composed at 6, was called the Moor for black of Bonn for Germany. And the citizens of Greece and Rome did not look like Charlton Heston and Kirk Douglas. You see, at one point, Europe is only 14 miles from Africa, and you can't stay white that close to that many black people. Now, if we may, let us go back to the very beginning of the human race. And I will apologize in advance for using this radical term, human race. It was 1 million years before one human being left the continent of Africa to go to Europe, the Far East, or Asia. I saw a televised report at the New York Museum of Science. They brought together the world's most renowned paleontologists, anthropologists, and paleoanthropologists. And these renowned scholars, all of whom were white, brought with them the oldest finds of the human race. And one white woman from South Africa stood before the camera with the fossil of a man's head in her hand. She said, "This man lived in Ethiopia 31 million years ago. Isn't it wonderful knowing that at one time my blood flowed through his veins?" You know what she said? She said she had been trapped by the truth. You see, if the oldest finds of the human race are in Africa, then every human being who lives, who has lived, or who shall ever live is an African. Oh, you can call yourself anything you want. You can paint wings on a pig, but if you throw him off of a building, he still can't fly. If you want to see God, look into the mirror, and you will see the face of perfection, if you have the consciousness to see it. Here we are, people who have come from Africa, where civilization started, where mathematics was created, where embalming was perfected, while the universities of the Timbuktus had higher learning when people in other parts of the world lived in caves. We're the people who created music and writing and literature. And here we are today in a part of the world where we feel alien and cut off from the very virtues that our own legacy has given to the rest of the world. That's how perverted the whole thing is. We are science. We are engineers. Have you ever looked at the pyramids? Have you ever looked at the Hyatts and see how they construct the same inside ventilation that they use in Africa? All you have to do, my brothers and sisters, is open up your eyes and your hearts and your minds. It is a whole world out there. Come out of that Negro slavery minority nonsense. You've got to go for the whole 9 yards. You are the best we have ever produced. You are the leaders. And don't worry about being called elite. You are elite. You're elite because you're good. You're not elite because you've achieved. We've established in the black community a status condition that anybody who achieves, we call them a traitor. Oh, look at her. Nice fur coat. Turned her back on the black community. Got a new car. Living out there in them nice houses. Come move out over here with the rest of us. Get bit by some of these rats. Prove you black. That's madness. Every other group in America puts you out if you don't have something. In our group, we put you out if you achieve. Sure, you're elitist. Tell them, be proud of it. You're damn right. Hard as I've studied, I deserve to be elite. Your consciousness is all we want from you. We want your success. We bless your health. We bless your wealth. We bless your happiness. We want you to have everything you see because God wants you to have it. And don't put that trip on God. Two black women talking, watching Dynasty. Girl, look at them old white folks there on Dynasty. Fur coats, chauffeurs, nice houses. Girl, you know they're going to burn in hell. We're going to get ours in heaven, aren't we? That's not my God. Nope, my God brought us out of bondage. My God brought us from slavery. My God has answered every prayer we've ever uttered. God gave us $250 billion last year to buy our freedom. You can't blame him because we turned around and gave everybody else 95% of it. My brothers and sisters, we don't have any barriers to freedom. The only barrier we have is our own inability to want to be free. Don't let anybody put anything else on you. Don't let anybody come to you and say, what are the chances of an electrical engineer, a black electrical engineer? What are the chances of a black chemical engineer? Your chances are just like any other engineers. But if you believe somehow your blackness is a liability, it will become one. It is not. It is a virtue. It is an asset. And you should embrace your culture as a means of being confident about your professional achievements and your professional ability. Don't put a trip on blackness. Too many folks want to say that we cannot make it. There's nothing we can't do. And God knows there's nothing we couldn't do together if we ever wake up to it. I'd like to talk about one final thing, and that is language. And we're talking about this trip that has been put on us. Nothing has been used more effectively than the way they've defined language, the way they've defined our heritage. Now, what are we told? We're told that because we speak with a dialect, that we are mentally inferior. Number one, we're not mentally inferior. And number two, we do have a dialect. Now, a dialect is simply a symbolic arrangement of a spoken word or spoken words that reflect your historical past and the past of your ancestors. That's all it is. The way you speak the English language is precisely what and who you are. When our ancestors came here, like ancestors of other groups from all over the world, they brought with them cultural baggage. A part of that cultural baggage was language. Now, the French person could not say the man, so he said Zeman. The African couldn't say the man either because he had no no th sound in the language. So he converted by saying duh. He said duh man. But Zeman is cute, isn't it? Don't say duh man. See, we denigrated one adaptive pattern and elevated another. Both were simply creating a new first generation pidgin language, which is what all immigrants do. The German keeps his syntax. The German does not say give me liberty or give me death. The German says give me the liberty or give me the death, because a proper noun in German takes a proper adjective. So although we speak with a new language, we keep the same syntax but drop in the syntax the slots of the new language community. And every immigrant group has adapted. As a result, we have residual forms of these adaptive patterns called dialects. Now there are 11 discernible dialects in America. Blacks have one of them. If there are 11 discernible dialects, what is the so-called standard dialect? The standard dialect is the dialect of the group with the most money and power. Namely, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. If blacks have as much wealth as wasps, Walter Cronkite would have to speak the way I speak to be on television instead of me speaking the way he speaks to be on television. But I recommend that all of you, particularly you students who are going into the corporate world, and I hope you do, all of you should speak, read, and write the standard dialect very, very well. I recommend it highly for food, clothing, and shelter. Now, when you get smart enough to spend 50% of your money with other black people, stabilize your own families, create good, clean communities, good schools, build up our neighborhoods and make us as happy and as wealthy as we make everybody else, then you can just stand at the cash register and grunt if you want to. But as long as you spend 95% of your money with somebody else and you depend on them for your JOBs, you must speak their language, which is why I am bidialectal. Meaning that I speak the standard dialect and I also speak my indigenous dialect. I just came back from Hollywood. You've got a piece of literature there on my movie, The White Girl, which will be out this summer. And I just made a little deal. I was out in Hollywood with these folks, and when the head man came in, I didn't say, "Hey, baby, what's happening?" I said, "Good morning, Mr. President. Have a nice day." Makes him feel safe. I didn't go there to be his black experience. I went there for commercial reasons. Now, when I'm with the tribe, I speak a more colorful language. And all of us in here know that a little later on tonight, is it the Commodore room? When that white wine gets to running around, we'll all come out with that real language. So, all I'm saying is that it's a matter of adaptation. And it's not a matter of whether or not you have a dialect, because you do. It's a matter of whether or not you know when it is appropriate to speak it. See, everybody has one. You go to New York, what do? They park the car. In Boston, in Boston, they park the car on the Harvard Yard. Now, that syntax is defined as the post-vocalic R. Words ending in R preceded by a vowel, they drop the R. That tells you the history of the people in the Northeast. You go to Texas and ask for directions, they'll tell you what? Turn left, rat here. You go to South Carolina, ask a brother where you are, you'll learn what? You are in South Carolina. You go to a Chinese restaurant and order French fried rice, and you will be served French fried rice. All of us speak the English language through the prism of our cultural antecedents. That's all we can be, is our language. Now, if you think our language is flawed, as they tell us, why is it that everybody copies it? Whatever we do, everybody else does. Why is that if there's something so fundamentally wrong with it? I was at St. Louis University. I tell you why, because we're the best at what we do. I was at St. Louis University, and I want to show you how we mix oral and non-oral. There's a brother sitting down there, and a buddy up here, he said, "Hey, Charles, what's happening?" Charles replied, my man said, "I hear you." And then I told you about the syntax in the post-vocalic R in the Northeast. Let me tell you about the continue to be. See, the continue to be is what black people employ. You've heard a black person say bees that way sometime, haven't you? Some of you look like you may have heard that. Well, you see, that's called the continue to be. You see, the rule is when a black person says it bees that way, it's that way sometimes, temporarily. But when it be that way, it's that way all the time. And then, if you watch how other groups interface with us, I was down in Atlanta in the airport, and I saw a white man and his grandson giving skin. They were just skinning, just having a ball out in the hallway, just giving it up. Now, it was down here last year, right? Where is it now? It's high five, right? Now, we don't know where it's going next year, to the side or behind the back. But we know one thing. The rest of America's watching us to find out. My brothers and sisters, we are a beautiful people. We are no better than any other group, but God knows we're not 1 millimeter of a centimeter any less than anyone else. Freedom is ours. More precisely, freedom is yours. The mantle is passing. We need you. God knows we need your brains desperately, but we need your hearts even more. We came on this earth for one reason, and one reason only, to do God's will. And you can only do it, if you have character. And character is something you get by doing the right thing, because the right thing is the right thing to do. And people have done it for centuries. A white woman named Mary White Ovington, conceived in her mind in an apartment in New York in January of 1909 to create the NAACP. And this white woman gathered 4 other white people and started the most massive and the greatest civil rights movement this country's ever known. A woman named Eleanor Roosevelt went down to Tuskegee, Alabama, when black men could not fly in combat, and she'd made a gesture flying in an airplane with a black man, and they said, if you get in that plane, you'll get killed. She got in, they flew, they landed. She said, well, they fly all right to me. And as a result, black men were allowed to fly in combat and became, I hope you know, of the all-black fighting 99th of World War II. A man named Frederick Douglass told us, you may not get all you pay for in life, but you'll certainly pay for all you get. My brothers and sisters, the world, the history books are replete with great men and women who will live far beyond the boundaries of their years because their souls were committed to the kind of work that this organization is committed to. And I ask you, in your troubled moments, when they come after you, and they will come after you, remember and hold on to an old African proverb. It's not what you call me, it's what I answer to. Have faith in yourselves, but most of all, have faith in God and understand there is something much bigger and much greater than this so-called racial nonsense that we are all confused with down here on this earth. Make it a better world for everyone. You don't have to live among rats, but remember, as long as any of us live among rats, you should help us get rid of them. In closing, I congratulate you for honoring me to let me share my thoughts with you, the future leaders of this country and of this world. And I leave you with a challenge. It comes from a poem called Flanders Field. Flanders Field is a graveyard in France in which many of the American dead from World War I are buried. And the poem was written to remind those dead men who were left behind of the tremendous sacrifice that they had made for those who came back alive. And it goes like this. To you from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies blow in Flanders Field. God bless you.
Isn't it amazing, the power of a few words? Good evening, I'm Connie Chung. The words you just heard are from a man named Vernon Johns. He spent his whole life turning those words into weapons. Vernon Johns died 24 years ago. Probably never heard of him, but after tonight, I don't think you'll ever forget him. We interviewed people who knew him best. You'll see them in a minute. You'll also see the Vernon Johns they remember, and we asked James Earl Jones to portray him. Let me tell you a couple more things about Vernon Johns. He was a farm boy who mastered German, Greek, Latin, and Hebrew, and then talked his way into a white college. He was a poet, a prophet, and a preacher. And if you aren't familiar with his name or his words, you're certainly familiar with what they created, because Vernon Johns, who never stopped thinking of himself as a farmer, sowed the seeds for the biggest social movement